Well, guys, welcome to the show. Good to have you, McKane and Randall. Too hot to handle, Randall, right? But yeah, tell us, McKane, tell us a little bit about quantum kinetics and
Yeah, so
kind of.
Quantum Kinetics is a company that started in 2018
Mhm.
and Washington based. And we're a research company that has discovered a new type of electricity. And we had it studied at the Department of Energy, PNNL, for 3 years before actually talking about it and announcing it.
What's PNNL?
Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. It's one of
Okay.
the finest. It's a Department of Energy affiliated lab.
Yeah.
And it's pretty amazing what we discovered this technology can do. We got published in Nature magazine NPJ for clean water. We were able to transmutate water, well water and ocean water, into new elements that weren't there before.
So describe new elements.
So let's say you have, some water and you turn on this reactor with the water in it. There's no aluminum in the water, and then you turn on the reactor, and then all of a sudden there's aluminum in there, and there's carbon and more nitrogen.
Wow.
And we've actually done experiments with heavy water, not just well water, but like deuterium heavy water. And we found that we can grow gold and we can grow tungsten. And we even found that we were seeing some trace elements of uranium in the water post-treatment, which was that was not there before. Now it's all of a sudden there.
So are you saying people don't need to mine anymore? Or like, what does that mean to find this out? And
well, the way I tell
Randall, is this widely known?
No, this is a totally new, and this is what the patent office said. That, like, basically, we already, like, you're good, you can have it. We're granting you the patents for this, and we want to tell you something. You'll be the first ever. Go do it, and go do it quickly. So there's definitely a need for this technology because we're running out of natural resources. We're running, like, how do we treat radioactive waste? We don't know how to do that. We just stick it in the ground. And so now Quantum Kinetics has a new technology platform for transmutating elements into inert elements like radioactive waste. And we've done studies on that, and it's amazing. We can actually turn uranium-234, 235, and 238. We can actually crack it and turn it into thorium, turn it into lead and tungsten. And we've even done that with cesium-137, and we turned it into barium. And so we have the ability to move the periodic table the way we want now with this technology platform. And we call it safe nuclear energy systems because what happens in the reaction is that it has a thermal glow of X-rays that only propagate about 8 to 12 inches away from the reactor.
Right.
And inside the reactor, there's little neutron fluxes going back and forth, like a proton turns to a neutron, neutron turns to a proton, and there's exchanges in the water. And so what happens is this is called safe nuclear because it's contained and safe in a space. And those neutrons are cold neutrons, thermal neutrons, and resonant neutrons. What our competitors are doing is they're spooling up their reactors to like insane high voltages and high current, like 1,000,000 amps. And they're releasing fast neutrons, which they can exit a concrete barrier potentially. And if they strike a human being or even an animal or anything else, bad things can happen. And so it's really exciting for us because going back to what you said, Tony, about mining, we have found that if you pour seawater in the reactor and turn it on, we can actually generate a new type of solid state battery material called a hydride, a metal hydride, which they can use for storing hydrogen for fuel cells. You can use it for battery, like lithium ion batteries as well. So there's a whole plethora of new platform technologies.
So why is it that you've discovered this, or your team has discovered this, and why aren't people knocking at the door to grab this tech?
So there are three things that we've found that there are people that just don't understand what we're talking about.
But you've proven it.
Right. And we say, hey, here it is. And they go, well, I don't know what you're saying. This is not conventional. I don't know what this is.
But you're able to show them a piece of gold, and yet they still do they think it's like voodoo or magic? Because it would seem very believable if you can produce here's the gold.
Yeah. And be mindful that these gold particles that show up, or titanium or aluminum, they're nanoparticles.
Okay.
So everything that we do is at the
more of
electron
it.
scale.
Uh-huh.
And so electrons can actually cavitate into a supernova event and then turn into something else. And we call that the quantum kinetic well phenomenon.
Right.
So I'll put it in a different way.
Yeah.
A little more translatable. So what I've told him is what you've discovered is basically an easy bake oven.
Yeah.
When you put in this,
that's how I would think
and
of
you
it.
dial this over to a specific thing, you can now output that, and
Yep.
just moving it a little over here becomes something else.
Like I want a new piece of jewelry. Here, let me make some gold. Boom.
In a fashionable way. Yes, that is one way to do this.
And what we found too, to go a little bit more into the easy bake nuclear oven, is that if you have the voltage really low, let's say like 30 volts input, which is very low, we see a more spiking up of carbon deposit and nitrogen deposits. And so we're like, okay, well, why don't we see the heavy elements at low voltage? So let's crank up the voltage to 60, let's double it. And then when you do that, you can see a lot more heavier elements show up, like iron, nickel, cobalt, and a bunch of other stuff.
Wow.
And then if you crank it to 90 volts, like go a little hotter, you start to see uranium, you start seeing tungsten and these really heavier elements. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
It's like
it's almost
modern
like
day alchemy.
Like that cartoon, The Jetsons.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But your question was on why aren't people diving in on this?
Yeah.
We've got something that we can show. There's a gap in between. And some of the pieces from a business standpoint in our business development is getting people to look at this. And that's partly why the exposure we're seeking.
Yeah.
But it's also, there is a belief valley to go over. Before I got into this with McKane, I would have been on that fence that said there's no way that this could possibly do that. It took me standing in a lab with him in front of physicists.
Yeah.
And it still just is amazing to watch. And the reaction you see on the face of these physicists while they're watching this happen in front of them. And we want to make that gap closed as quickly as possible. We have an opportunity and we want to get this business out into the open.
So where can we go? You have the lab up in Washington?
Yeah, so the lab, just like any beginnings, always starts in a garage, right?
Yeah.
And then it goes from
So it's
there.
literally in your garage right now.
It's in different places. Yeah.
I mean, Tony Stark built his Iron Man suit in a garage, right?
I think it was actually in a cave.
In a cave, yeah. Oh, yeah. Cave before the garage.
Yeah. And I mean, like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and everyone, they all started in garages too.
Yeah.
So it's pretty
So
common.
what was your story growing up and
Good
how
question,
you got
Tony.
into this path of creating something out of nothing?
You know, it started as, I was a pole vault coach and I had my own business for like 9 years.
What kind of business?
I was coaching pole vaulting.
Oh,
I
pole
actually was
vaulting.
like teaching like high school, middle school, college, and also masters. So
Wow.
I've been a coach and teacher for 15 years.
Where'd you compete? as
I
pole
was
vaulter?
a Division I athlete in the University of Washington.
Okay. Pole vaulter?
Yeah, I was the 5th ranked highest vaulter ever there. So,
Wow.
Yeah. Next to the world famous Brad Walker.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know Brad Walker.
Oh, yeah. But,
Almost world famous.
almost.
Almost.
So I basically, I got in a really bad car accident with my wife in 2014. And we rolled down a snowbank ravine. We rolled cartwheel 12 times. And I knew as we were falling that there's a good chance I'm not going to live through this. And so I put my hands on the roof and my feet on the floorboard and just braced for these cartwheels. And it was a very scary experience because every turn, the Subaru got smaller and smaller. And it was like being in a tin can, but it was a washing machine at the same time. And I knew I was counting it each time, like, wow. And it was, okay, the next turn I'm going to die. And then we stopped and we were upside down. And we got pinched in between some trees. And we got out of the car, I got my wife out and I got my buddy's girlfriend out. And it's snowing. And we're outside of Leavenworth. And no one's around. Just this car that's upside down.
Wow.
And it was really surreal.
This is Highway 2?
It's just off Highway 2, off
Okay.
Campbell Nelson Road.
Yeah.
It's kind of it's a logging road up to her friend's house. And when the snow was coming down, no one said a word. And it was so strange that this little whisper in my head said, hey, you almost died and you didn't do the one thing we sent you here to do. And I was like, and I had this vivid vision of this thing. And I said, okay, I know what I need to do now.
So you say that's a message from God?
Or a collective consciousness of the, the human, the collective consciousness. I call it that because I think that we are all capable of higher level technology discovery. We just have to think outside the box. And right now we're kind of like stuck in a rut with our technology. And it comes from an artist's perspective, like, hey, think of it this way. Oh, it works that way. How come we didn't think of that?
Right.
So
which camp of pyramid history are you part of? Is the pyramid a reactor, or is it did a bunch of slaves put it together?
That's a great question. I would say,
after having gone through what you just gone through,
I'd say after 7 years of reading physics and quantum field theory and doing my own experiments and learning about how to write patents and being on the high end technology side, I'd say they're generators.
They're generators.
They're electrostatic generators, yes.
Wow.
That use the Earth's electrostatic charge and electron base load on the low on the plane there next to the water running by it causes electrostatic charges. It meets the criteria for a generator.
Interesting.
A solid state generator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And free power for everyone.
Yeah, just in that localized region, yes. Yeah. It's a field.
So would you say that even the pyramids of Peru and they were the same thing?
I'd say that they're derivatives, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or trying to be of that nature, yes.
So you had this awakening, right? What'd you do next?
So I was actually a firefighter at the time, and so I knew what to do. I got on 911 and I got the dispatch going and got the firefighters up to Campbell Nelson Road. And one of our friends, Caitlin, was hurt really bad. Her knee was bummed and she couldn't stand up. And so once the firefighters showed up, I'd said, okay, we're doing a high angle rescue. Do you know how to do that? And they got out of their rig and said, we're volunteer. We don't know what that is. And so I said, okay, grab all the spider straps, grab your backboard, grab all the rope. We're going to do a high angle rescue, and this is how we're going to do it. So I became instant command of the scene that had just transpired.
Wow.
So I was teaching these firefighters how to tie a bowline knot and teaching them how to get the spider straps ready to take it down to Caitlin and everything. So once that whole thing was fixed and everyone got to the hospital and whatnot, I got back home and I kept having these pressure buildups in my head of like, you've got to do it, you got to do it. But I'm trying to like piece my world back together. I just got a car accident. I got to do coaching. I got to, so everything. And I want to do
back to work.
Yeah. It was like, what is going on in my life? It's completely unraveling. And it was supposed to unravel. And the blasé of my world was supposed to be opened so that I could do something special with my life. And I'm so thankful to be at this point right now because it's been a long, arduous 7 years of working in the shop, working on this.
Now, was your degree in physics?
I've always been interested in science fiction. And since I was a Division I athlete, I didn't have much time to do architecture, though I wanted to. So I just studied general art and interdisciplinary art at the UW.
Okay.
And then I focused on computers or, digital media. And then I got picked up at a grad school to go to Canada and do a master's degree. And then I worked for EA Sports in the motion capture department. That was really fun.
Which games?
Oh man, Dragon Age, the first MMA game.
Yeah.
I have to tell you the motion capture, the first MMA game was a disaster because all the little dots were being occluded and you couldn't see on the camera. So you had to like make up.
Yeah.
It was just.
And it was tough to grab people probably.
Yeah. You'd have like the models
would fall off.
Yeah. And they just fall off. You're like, oh, I have to pitch it. I have to stitch that together. So yeah, it's been a really fun journey. And then now I'm just doing science and that's what my life is.
So you, the message keep coming to you. How did you start to build your shop? And how did you get connected to Pacific Northwest Laboratory?
Great question.
Because you're getting this message, and I can't imagine your wife's looking at you. It's like, why are you buying that table? Why are you taking all this stuff out of the garage? And like, what are you doing?
Yeah. So I started on hydrogen projects for like injection into my BMW back when I was, first starting. And so I'd have like these water splitter electrolyzers, like pumping hydrogen gas into the engine. And I would like go drive to the emissions place and get my exhaust tested and be like, honey, look, it's got 0 CO2. Look, it's working. And she's like, honey, go mow the lawn.
Yeah.
And so, I just put the thing down and go mow the lawn. So like I was kind of just following my kid discovery pathway every day I could. So
you're working your day job, come back home, start tinkering.
Yep. And then that got so intense where our relationship kind of fell apart, and then we went our different ways. And as soon as we went our different ways, I locked myself. I actually moved back home to my parents, which is kind of not a great thing to do, if you're a guy.
Yeah.
And girls don't like that.
Yeah, especially as an adult, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of accepted that I was dead. Like my life, McKane, is dead. Like in that crash, I'm gone.
Right.
So I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go off the path.
Like a new you.
It was a new me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever happens, happens. And I knew there was something special about splitting water. And that's what I started with. And so I started like putting coils around it and see what that would do. And then tried different things. And there was this moment in the lab after about 2 years of working by myself where it just wasn't doing anything. And I read all these patents, I read all this science, and I read all this stuff, and I'm like, okay, I can do this, right? I can do this. Nothing was working. So it wouldn't make any bubbles, and if I turned it up, the amperage would go crazy high, and I'm like, okay, this isn't working. And at that point, I kind of had this, oh no, is this the end? Like, did I make the wrong choice here?
Yeah.
Going down this path. And I just broke down. I remember exactly. I was right next to the coil winder, and I just started bawling. And I knew, okay, this is over. My life is over now, officially. And right at that moment, it happened again. That pressure built up in my head, and it's like this voice. I had this like surreal out-of-body experience where it's like, just go this, this, and this. You're so close. I'm like, well, I better go try it.
Yeah.
I got nothing to lose. So I rearranged everything and did it like no one would do it conventionally and turned it on. And sure enough, there was bubbles and hydrogen everywhere and the amperage was super low. And I'm like, and the voltage, I could turn it up all the way and it wouldn't change the amperage and more bubbles. And I'm like, this is really special. I think this is it. And then I had a weird mild headache after that. And I'm like, oh, I'm just tired. I better go to bed. And then I came back the next morning and did it again. And I was like, hey, this is so cool. And then I got that mild headache again. I was like, oh, gosh. So I didn't think much of it at first until I started saying, hey, maybe we should like get this tested and stuff. Maybe we should really have it officially tested. So we did, and we got all the equipment and we did everything right. We got the government involved. The Department of Energy did a contract with them, and we did it all the way you're supposed to. And and they said, these numbers look amazing. We don't even want to write the first manuscript for you because we don't really know what these numbers mean. We want you to write the first manuscript draft. And I said, I'm paying you kind of a lot of money. Like I'm an artist. Like you write it.
Like, no, you got this.
Yeah.
you write it. We'll tell you.
Yeah, totally.
It's like filing your own taxes. I was
shocked.
Right?
I was like, really? And so he sent me all the data and I'm like, okay. So I spent 2 months looking at all the data and doing the research of like this element, why'd that show up? And why'd this one go away? And so I just started documenting and researching and writing and just doing this discovery mode on my own. And I wrote the first draft and sent it back to the DOE, and they said, that's what we thought too. And I said, it's the only conclusion based on the data that is presented here is this is electrophysical transmutation. And they said, that's what we thought too. We just didn't want to say it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my gosh.
It's sort of like taxes, right? It's like, you tell us how much you think you owe. but we'll tell you what you really owe after that.
And so, Tony, I have to tell you, like, truth is stranger than fiction. That's what I'm learning about all this. Like, this rabbit hole goes way deep. It's
Really?
very deep. And we're just beginning to scratch the surface of this thing.
So what's the goal with the company that you've created? So you've left the DOE.
Mm-hmm.
You've started your own company.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit more about the company.
So the company is currently, right now as it stands, is we're an intellectual property ownership of safe nuclear energy technologies.
Mm-hmm.
So we have 6 patents. We're working on our 7th patent, which is an omnibus patent in all different fusion reactors.
Mm-hmm.
We also have a bunch of secret patents that we're preparing for. And so right now we're basically preparing the legalization of the future that hasn't arrived yet.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing right now. And at this current junction right now, our focus is to do something that nobody's ever done in history, which is remediation of nuclear used fuels.
So all the Hanford waste, you're thinking you have a solution.
We do have a solution. It is actually a transmutation solution. Because currently, right now, the status quo is just put it in the ground and wait.
So why wouldn't you just go to the Department of Energy again and say, hey,
back to the thing you were talking about earlier, there's a gap that we cross.
Mm-hmm.
What's that gap?
So if there's going to be a credibility factor to bring out from this, somebody has to look at our results. Somebody has to validate it. Somebody has to say, I'm willing to invest in that. So it's a combination of those who are less skeptical, just like I was skeptical, even though I saw it, I still am too hard to believe. Mm-hmm. You have to come across that gap and look at the data. This is scientific data we're looking at.
But if it can be proven, why wouldn't? So if they have nothing to lose, why wouldn't they look at it?
That's what we're asking: is who from the other side is going to look at this and come alongside us? We have it. But they're saying, in many regards, you need to have the money around it before the rest of us are going to come.
So it almost sounds like the Tesla and Westinghouse story, where it took a big funder to fund 2 scientists, and then they went with the other scientists, and that changed the course of history.
If we don't bring that to the table soon, I think sooner-ish anyway, others will start to figure out something other than what they're doing, because what they're doing isn't working.
But can somebody else just license your patent?
Well,
how does that work?
That would be one business model that we could consider as an IP leasing agency. Mm-hmm. That takes us out of the filings and so forth and the delays, and we just simply allow others to build it out.
Isn't there like a company in town that creates a lot of patents and intellectual ventures? You guys ever heard of them?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Are they in Seattle?
Yeah, it's a former Microsoft guy. Intellectual Ventures. But you read about them all the time.
Big shout out and a huge thank you to Zeakin for making this happen. They have an amazing platform. Check out their website, zeakin.com, ZEACON.com.
Yeah, we don't.
But that's interesting. So what problem does quantum kinetics solve, other than being able to store or to get rid of? What I'm hearing is you get rid of nuclear waste.
Right. So we can transmutate it from a heavier element down into something lower that's inert.
And then what happens after that?
And then it basically just becomes a soil hydride, which has a bunch of hydrogens connected to it, which you could use for solid state batteries or hydrogen storage.
It's like a true renewable energy.
Yeah, and I have to tell you that when you have nuclear fusion, which is what this is, life just gets easier in every regard. I mean, you can mine the ocean if you want to. You don't have to pillage the crust of Earth anymore. You just put seawater in it, turn it on, it makes a bunch
Well,
of
what happens to the water then?
The water just turns into hydrogen oxygen gas and into the atmosphere.
And then it comes back down.
And then it condenses in the water again, and boom, it's clean water in the atmosphere.
So you're
and it rains again.
You're touching on a couple of things. Before I became an investor, I had two very distinct questions, and he needed to answer these right. And one was, are we simply creating a new form of garbage as an output?
Yeah.
You know, are we recontaminating? What is the byproduct?
Because the byproduct of creating lithium-ion batteries is more waste, right?
Right. And so I wanted to not invest in something that simply replaced one form of junk for another. The other was, can it be weaponized? Mm-hmm. And that was important because you're mentioning nuclear fusion. And it's never the intent. But if you were to make an automobile, it's never the intent to do anything other than get in it and go from place to place, but you can drive it into a parade and mow a bunch of people. It's down to heart and soul of the people that are going to use it for good or evil. That's always going to be a circumstance that we'd have to consider, but we would try to build it as safely as we could for deployment and when we scale to commercial production. So that would be guarded and watched, and I'm sure any product would go out there with all kinds of safety features.
Yeah, because I mean, if you have a nuclear oven, basically,
transmutation oven, right?
Transmutation oven, you could create, from what it sounds like, almost anything.
Yeah. So the NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Committee, they have like rules about like you can actually build and make this hydride material using a particle accelerator, like at home. Yeah. It's totally legal to do that. But the moment you take that material and try to sell it on eBay or anywhere, you're breaking the law.
So you can't sell soil that you've just made.
You can't sell that hydride fusion material that you just made that has high energy density.
So how many people are making hydride?
Very select people with proper regulatory permits. And there are.
But
why would they want to do that? Why would somebody just make what you just described?
Well, the reason is because you can make a cake out of it, a really tight back, like a puck, and you can put that in a vessel, like a stainless steel jar or whatever, and put a cap on it, and you can put a coil of heaters on it, and it will heat that hydride and get it kind of jostling about, and the hydrogens will come off like pollen. So the hydrogen is actually hydride is the world's most safest energy of hydrogen storage in the world, in the universe, actually. It's a metal hydride. And you can just heat it up, just warm it up, the coil, and it will just off-gas hydrogen continuously. And that's how the Department of Energy actually wants to start incorporating hydrogen fuel cells is through hydride technologies. But right now, the DOE is actually asking, how do we make a very specific type of hydride? And they don't know how to make this specific type of hydride because this specific hydride has the highest energy density compared to aluminum, to iron, or nickel, any of the other metals. There is a very specific metal alloy that this device fabricates. And it's a carbon-based hydride, which has the highest energy density potential. But nobody really knows how to make that efficiently. But we do. Quantum Kinetics, using our patented technology, does. So to go back to your question, Tony, why isn't everyone jumping on this? It's because it's so revolutionarily new and out of the box, and it's too good to be true. I'm not going to listen. I'm not going to take the bait.
So not even Elon would listen?
I don't know if you, maybe.
So you've also got those that do not want this to succeed.
That's a good point.
You've got the industry that exists that petroleum, for example, would really rather not you succeed, and a few others. So in order to get over the corporate valley of death.
Until they discover it, right?
Well, or they stop you, and buy you out or stick it on the shelf because they want to continue the legacy programs. So we have to overcome that as well. There is a challenge to making it through the resistance as well as the opportunity for someone who comes on board. It's a win if we do this correctly. Everybody wins. There's nobody on planet Earth that would stand up and say that's a ridiculous idea. Clean energy is really stupid. Let's stay with, where we're at. We can bring something far better. And this is right on the cusp of happening if somebody wants to step up and join us in the battle.
Yeah.
And how would how would the company make money?
So there's a couple of avenues.
Right, because that's what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, I did mention
Yes.
that we could probably look at the intellectual property leasing arrangement. We could also look at development of prototypes.
But how would you charge people
How would you charge people? Well,
for free energy?
well, free energy is not free components to make free energy.
Yeah.
That's still the component is the stock and trade that we have. We would be commoditizing that. So there's still an opportunity to see how, in the many avenues that this technology could be deployed, it isn't just simply remediation of nuclear waste. It isn't simply just home heating with some potential sources there. There are some other areas we could explore that would take timing to not ruffle the feathers too quickly. Establish your credibility, get out there, and then people will want it versus people will be afraid or misunderstand it. Change the perception, change the paradigm, because we are still stuck in this mode of too good to be true. And we're sitting on it with results. We're holding them up.
And
somebody's got to come along and say,
not even the
we're
very
ready,
people
we're ready to do something.
You work with.
Yeah.
Well, they're so stunned that they don't even know what to say. Like they wouldn't even write. They wouldn't even stick their neck out and write what they thought was going on. They didn't even want to do that. They had me do that. Wow. So what I find is that there's three people in the world. There's only three. There's cowards, heroes, and villains, and that's it. And we've actually talked to many companies about our technology, and some have told us straight up that we're going to try to steal it. And some have said,
that's very honest of them.
No, and that's what's so strange. It's like, whoa, what? Yeah.
Like, great idea. I'm going to steal this from you someday.
Yeah. And then there are some people that just say, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's way beyond me, right? And then there's some people that are like, how do I help? And those are their heroes. So this technology is not just going to be quantum kinetics. This is going to be a movement that the entire world has to decide. We want this now. It's time. I mean, just look at the latest hurricane. It just destroyed people's lives. The climate crisis is real, and we have to figure out the solution. And this is one piece of the solution right here. I'm not saying it is the solution. I'm saying it's one piece. Help. Yes.
Yeah.
So it really comes down to, are you willing to get out of your shell of your normal life and try to make a change? You have to get out of the blasé world of just like doing this all the time on the hamster wheel. You gotta, okay, I have to dedicate something, my money, my time, my effort to that. It's like a baby. Like a baby comes in the world, can't take care of itself. You have to do something for it until it grows its legs and gets strong. And then it can go when it grows big and strong. So yeah, everything like Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, they all started in a garage. And
this is your garage.
He's got his hand on the door. He's ready to whip that door up.
I've been in there too long. As they say, no bucks, no Buck Rogers. So in order to build this stuff out and get it deployed, it takes money. It's just the way the world works.
And getting through a lot of bureaucracy.
Unfortunately, that is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a tough road.
Well, there's a lot of belief, though. We're still behind this 100%.
And how long have you guys been operating?
Well, we started the business in 2018. At that point, we were basically full research mode until about 2022. And then 2023, we started being more public. 2024, now we're like, okay, we did the impossible. We cracked uranium with like 20 watts of power.
And now you're ready to go.
Yeah, it's like we did it.
Yeah.
We got the crown.
Who wants to come along on this ride?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you were the skeptic. What?
Initially, I was a skeptic because of how many people had come along before and kind of claimed that they had nuclear fusion. It turns out they were frauds. And when you do it too many times, this is just the next thing that's come up. It's like, sure you do.
Yeah.
So without my friend, our mutual friend who had gone with McKane to do a demonstration the first time for physicists, I would have simply just stayed in that never's going to happen. You're never going to trick me, right?
Yeah.
McKane and I and my wife went to the facility in June, and I dressed up with him in the personal protective equipment, and we did another demonstration for the physicists.
We should have probably done the show up there.
Out in Georgia, pretty far away.
That's Atlanta.
That's where it's at.
We flew
No,
to
your
Atlanta.
garage.
Oh,
Don't you
well,
have this in your garage?
This could be episode 2. Is come to the lab.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
really
guys
might
want to.
consider that.
Where's the lab at?
It's just north of Everett.
Okay.
But my skepticism, it took even watching it.
Mm-hmm.
It still is. It's hard to believe. I understand people's skepticism and the ability to make the leap to become an investor. It almost takes it giving out this emotion of we've got to do it, and we're appealing to that type of people right now. Really, what we need is somebody who says, "I believe, and I'm willing to step forward." Well, with this pile of money, and can get over it. Now, what we can do is we don't have to do a lot of sitting there and try to convince you and do all this song and dance. We'll show you.
Yeah.
But we can prove it. This is not at the point where we're talking about it. We're ready to go. We need somebody to get on board. That's how close it is. This is no longer about skepticism. This is about opportunity and whether it's going to be taken or missed.
Yeah.
It's true.
The way I say it is, I like to phrase it in the way that the first person to put chips on this is going to rule Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Just like Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
I mean, like,
you watch Rings of Power,
I,
right? You talk about villains. What goes into the product, right?
yeah. It's truth has been stranger than fiction. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
It's just been very enlightening experience from even the very beginning, early days. And the book highlights a lot of that.
Thank you for the book, by the way.
You're very welcome.
Where can people find the book?
So the book is on Amazon. It's you can do Kindle. You can do an audiobook. It's the Quantum Kinetic Well, powering the world with endless clean energy or limitless clean energy. And it's a 170-page book. Real quick, just let you guys know how the experience came about and the perilous journey of being an artist and an experimenter at the same time, and just going into the university setting and flooring everyone. Like, how did you do that? And
because it's such a, I mean, it's crazy to think that you got into an accident and now your mind has been just opened.
I think
and then you hear the voice, right?
Everyone can do this. Like, we all have the ability to access the higher domain. We do.
And that's what you felt happened in that accident.
Absolutely.
But do you think people have to go through that extreme trauma to access?
I think that it can be meditated. You can meditate it and make it occur naturally. But it's really challenging. You have to have like gurus helping you do that, or maybe even a psychedelic as well. But
what kind of psychedelics?
Well, to go back to the book, I was married to a hippie princess named Happy Israel.
Happy Israel.
And so I was a straight-laced kid from, up north.
Yeah.
But yeah. So essentially,
she's like, come free your mind with me.
Pretty much. And she and I were able to explore the universe in very special ways. And she told me one time, she's, McKane, I've done these experiences with other people. And I have to tell you, every time I do this with you, you're like a different creature. Like I've never felt this before with anybody else. Like, you have a special aura. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, I'm just whatever.
Yeah.
So there's something in your brain that you can access to open. I mean, even Nikola Tesla talked about that. You can open up your mind and pull data from other time frames.
Interesting.
He said that. Yeah.
I should go read up on his stuff.
You should. Nikola Tesla he was even projecting cell phones, in the 1920s. He was like, oh yeah, cell phones are going to be a thing. Everyone's like, what's a cell phone?
So he had these visions?
When he had the vision of the AC motor that didn't exist, he drew it in the sand because he was watching the sunset come up. And he was thinking, well, if the sun's coming up over there, that means something's setting over there. And so that's how he got the idea of the quadrupole remover, the switching poles to make it spin and grab electricity from it. And so like you have to be by yourself and you have to be in a meditative state to have access to the higher dimensions.
And curious.
And very curious. Like a child.
Yeah.
It's very important. Like a child.
My mind's blown right now. So how did you guys connect? Like, because you were initially looking to invest, and then you signed up to the company.
So I started to interact more with McKane directly, and I asked more questions, and I started to become, as he said, you need to be curious. And I'm a little different than McKane.
No,
I'm more of a man of faith kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And when you hear something in your head, I would credit that more of a Holy Spirit kind of a thing.
No, that's why I asked. Like,
And for me, it's we were 15 minutes into our first time that we met, and you know how he called it a pressure in your head that kind of tells you a little something.
Yeah.
That for me, it was more of a spiritual presence, I guess, or something that kind of came to me, and I would credit that. I'd say that's kind of a God thing that said, you have an involvement in this. And I'm like, this guy is half crackers, man. I don't know if I'm
but the Lord is telling you.
Obedience is the thing. If you believe, you're obedient. And I said, okay, I'll follow it and see where this takes me and what's going on and how do I bring it about. And initially I was helping to bring in investors and started with some of the suggestions that I could help a little bit. And then a little while ago, McKane said, hey, I think we're going to make you vice president. And I said, that's probably a great idea.
Yeah.
So it's been an interesting ride. I've been along almost a year. So this has been seeing this come from fresh out of the first time that they went to the lab, him and our mutual friend, to ending up going in June and seeing it myself.
And you spent, 20 years at Boeing?
I was at Boeing for 20 years in my early career in engineering.
So you can kind of understand what it means to tinker with
I'm
ideas.
sure glad you said kind of.
Yeah.
This is a different kettle of fish altogether. Right. But then like I said, I went into health insurance and health care as a program project manager type. And that's my thing. And that's my angle for helping Quantum Kinetics to, as we start to flesh out, to scale this to properly go into the business, looking ahead, getting a good horizon, making sure that we see what's coming, but also take advantage of the opportunities right in front of us, grab the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
But really that trying to bring the horizon closer much more quickly is that investor. So we've got to cross that.
Yeah.
We know it. It's the one thing right now.
Yeah. So do you guys find that, the God versus higher conscious, meddles with the day-to-day operations?
No.
It actually promotes it.
Promotes it, yeah.
Once you get the bug, you just keep going because it's like, wait, there's no other solutions out there. So we have to do this.
Yeah.
It's almost like a duty now.
Right.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter the religion or belief or whatnot.
I think that all religions are like a spoke wheel, right? Like every spoke goes to the center axis, which is God. And the wheel on the outside is all the people. And so, like, say one spoke is, Buddha or, Catholicism or Christianity. They're all important. They all point to this thing. And the funny thing about the universe is that it's all entwined into itself. So when we are on the outside, if we are helping each other and making the wheel stronger, we're making God stronger too.
Yeah.
The axis becomes strong. And so our responsibility is to develop this for our own sakes. And so that we become closer to this higher consciousness or this God, because that's where this energy comes from anyway.
Right.
You just tap the atom in a very specific way and there it is.
Wow.
And I could go a little further if you want, but in the Bible, the first sentence is, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. That's the first sentence. What does that mean? And after 7 years of studying physics and quantum field theory, this is what it means, from my opinion, is that heaven is antimatter. It's something you can't see, you can't touch, you can't interact with it, but it's there. It's a charge. It's the conjugate charge of the electron, which is Earth. It's something that we interact with all the time. It's the electron, which is Earth. And when you have an electron pop into existence, you automatically get positrons. And if they touch each other, they automatically annihilate into pure light, which then the next sentence in the Bible says, and God said, let there be light, and it was good. And so quantum field theory, in my opinion, it could be wrong, is identical. The Bible is a quantum kid's book to the thermodynamic world of the quantum space.
Wow.
Yeah.
I've never heard that before.
It's an interesting
It's
take.
very interesting.
Although I'm a little more of the mindset that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. And I think we're going to find out in our time that it's a lot more dynamic, and we want things to kind of be packaged and fit our own way of thinking.
Yeah.
I understand that we want that to be able to have some mastery over it that way. You see that play out a lot, but I think it's far beyond anything we know or understand. And that's a bit of faith again.
Yeah.
But, the evidence that supports your faith without turning this into theology and back to quantum kinetics, I'll just wrap on this point to say there is a truth.
There you go.
And I can attest to many of the
and
things.
you guys are looking to find that truth and promote good in the world, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Light in the darkness.
Yep. So how do people find you?
Well, you can find us on YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
Quantum Kinetics Corporation's YouTube channel. We have about 6,300 new subscribers in about 1 week.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So, thank you. It's people really liking the arc reactor. And the arc reactor, and then you can also check us out on quantumkinetics.com or .co. The arc reactor is an interesting story if you want to talk about the arc reactor.
That's what I was
in the front of the book.
Yeah, it's in the front of the book. It's on the website.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
So
before we close out here.
Yeah. So the arc reactor, I've always liked the Iron Man series and whatnot. And when I was writing the patent, I didn't have a specific item to wrap it around specifically. I was just patenting the electronics. I'm like, well, I got to find something to wrap this electronics around.
Like give a visual?
Yeah, give a patent visual. Like, what is this? And so I was just looking at fusion reactors, tokamaks, accelerators, all this stuff. And I'm like, and I saw this picture of the arc reactor online. I'm like, I'm looking at it going, no way. The way that's all set up, I could totally wrap it around that.
Yeah.
And so I bought the $40 toy from Amazon, and it was a DIY, so you could take it all apart. So I took it all apart and measured every little thing and put it on the computer and use that for the patent. And then I also, to prove a patent, you have to prove a concept. So I was like, okay, I'm going to wrap the coils around it just like the arc reactor and everything. And I turned it on, and sure enough, there's the glow. And I'm like, okay, I can write a patent on that. Okay.
I gotta see this.
Yeah.
So it's not just a LED light. It's
no, it's
you don't want to stick your hand in it.
And we were supposed to have a demonstration here, but you thought the better.
Well, I think that we should start slow, like any relationship.
Yeah. It's like notify the whole building. We're about to have a nuclear presentation here.
Well, and here's the big home run for quantum kinetics, and why it's so important, is that industry is doing these giant reactors, and they're doing this huge amount of voltage and huge amount of amperage. Like for one shot, it's like 1 million amps. And when you have that kind of an energy density, the universe reacts and she spews out fast neutrons everywhere. And they're very dangerous. And they go through most things, sometimes even through concrete. And so our approach is 180 degrees different. It's like, if you can't do it right at a small scale, why do it on a big scale, right? Get it right where it's easy and low cost. And so what we do is we trigger a neutron flux that doesn't go very far. It's just right. It's tiny. And so then as it's glowing, there's all these other, like, there's gamma rays that come off it too, but it's the same gamma rate as a granite countertop.
So there's gamma rays coming
There's
out.
gamma. Yeah, it's very it's safe.
Yeah.
But then there's X-rays too that go a little further. And so there's these stair-stepping gradients of nuclear energy that are there.
Wow.
And there's another thing that can happen too, but we're not going to talk about that because that's super secret.
That's the teaser.
Yeah, that's the next thing. Yeah. So.
Well, McKane, thank you for coming on the show. Randall, thank you for coming on the show and sharing a little bit more about quantum kinetics. This has been very fascinating.
Thank you so much, Tony.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it has.